So this is a talk about making sure everyone is welcome, making sure your group is an inclusive and welcoming environment. So this is about equality, inclusion, and making your group a safe space. So going to go through a couple of the protected characteristics. So they're all on the screen, including age, disability, gender, marriage and civil partnership status, pregnancy and maternity, race, religion and belief, sex, sexual orientation, class and political affiliation. Does anybody want to guess what protected characteristic means, or does anybody know? Show of hands. Yes. Yes, essentially, it's a list of characteristics that is a person's personal identity that cannot be discriminated against, else that's a criminal offence, essentially. So any of these, a person is able to express how they want, whenever they want, and express views on that, and that's protected to them, and a criminal offence if anybody takes objection to that. So wanted to add a quote in here about what it means. So everyone has the right to freedom of opinion and expression. That's freedom of speech. And to get these really, really clear, so that was from Eleanor Roosevelt in 1948. But the difference between freedom of speech and hate speech is harassment or insults with the intent of harming or excluding an individual or group is the difference. So you can express your views freely, of course, that's freedom of speech, but with the intent of harming or excluding an individual or a group, that's hate speech, and we won't allow it at the Students' Union. So harassment covers a wide range of unwanted and offensive behaviour intending to threaten or disturb, resulting in a group or an individual feeling threatened or disturbed. So some of these behaviours include unwanted comments and behaviour, bullying, online harassment, threatening words and offensive gestures. Some students might find it harder to engage with groups or activities because of a protected characteristic, and so making efforts to ensure these students can and feel comfortable to engage is super, super important. So if you need any advice about this, please talk to us if you want advice about a specific situation, and we can provide a bursary for students in your group if they need any additional accommodations, essentially a taxi to or from an event, or you need any specialist equipment such as hearing loops in your society or event. We can provide that for you, and we've got funding available. That's something new this year, and something we're really proud to be able to offer. So please do approach us if you need any of those accommodations or for anybody in your group. Oops. And so I'd like you all to think a bit about how you can interact with your activities and how you can make them more accessible. Sorry, I thought that was my microphone, but somebody moving a table. So to think about how different groups interact with your societies, is your activity wheelchair accessible? Is the food provision inclusive? Is the environment as welcoming as it could be? Is there a quiet space available? Can anybody think of any ideas of events or accommodations that could be made in your clubs or societies or volunteering projects that might help different types of students in different student groups? Yeah. The sensory room is available to students, and you can book this out as part of your club and society if you're at the activities hub in that space. Yeah. Yeah, that's a super good point. Did everybody hear that, or do you need me to repeat it on the microphone? Okay, so it was about if you're running a physically active session or a session that involves a lot of movement or a lot of physical activity, for the students who might not feel comfortable doing that or might not be able to do that, running a concurrent activity that doesn't require that extensive movement, or a concurrent activity that's in a quieter, less physical space might be good, as well as having access to quiet and sensory rooms as well. Providing those students with similar opportunities to make sure that they're not left out and just don't go to these events. So that was a really good one. Yes. Yes, you can contact opportunities in their Bangor, and we can make sure that the space is as accessible as possible. Again, if any of your societies, clubs or volunteering projects needs a space to be more accessible, or you have students that need accommodations, we can always provide them and move rooms, provide hearing loops or any accommodations to that as well. Does anybody have any other ideas or input? Okay, so in your groups, and if you're not in a group, do you want to try and move to make sure you're in a 2 or 3? Please may you have a bit of a discussion about how you might collaborate with other groups to provide a more safe and accessible space for your groups. I'll be asking for thoughts after this, so please do discuss it.
I think things a bit nervous anyway, so he can come up and start and stuff up because he's not got sight. He's gonna like go through the website on the internet. I can sort that out. How did the other one go? Were you in it? Was that?
It's for my Okay, cool. So just bringing you back to the main room. So anybody have any ideas about potential collaborations with other clubs, societies, or any ideas they want to put to the floor? Yes. Yeah, that's really good. You can always book a room from the Students' Union to organise non-drinking socials or non-drinking socials running concurrently to drinking socials as well. So using spaces such as the Room of Requirement, Activities Hub and spaces within the Students' Union as well. Anybody else got any ideas? I'm going to pick on this group here. Yes, so that was about warnings provided in advance for activities that might have flashing lights and that sort of thing for students with disabilities, but also about asking students beforehand if they've got any dietary requirements or any specific requirements that need to be made for that session as well to make sure that you can provide for them adequately. That's really good. Group in the middle. So there's a lot of kitchens on the St Mary's site that you can book out and have use of. You can contact again opportunities that in their Bangor if you want to book them. Those kitchens are above Barlow's. I don't know whether you've been there before, but they're all open to be booked for student groups, and you can always cook your own food, book them out, get together as a collaboration as well. That's a super good idea. Just ask Helen through opportunities in the Bangor and we'll be able to book that for you. So at the back, does anybody want to put a hand up? No, that sounds very much like the back. Oh, yes, Amy. Yeah, that's a really good point. Does everybody hear that in the room? Cool. So making sure that sports aren't just gendered, so we can get more people involved in sports, and making sure that people know that they can get involved in sports is a super important one. One that we'd like to have a conversation about this year, particularly around Bucks creating the rules around trans people in sport. We'd like to have a chat with any students who are interested in that and interested in the legislation around that. Please come and talk to us so we can be able to put your views into it through Lewis to be able to get that legislation as inclusive as possible, because that point is correct that all the sports teams at the minute are separated into men and women, and we definitely do want to make that more inclusive, but that at the minute comes from Bucks, and so we'd like them to have more inclusive legislation to allow us to be able to have more sporting competitions that are more inclusive. But if you want to make your club more inclusive as a club itself, you can always come to us and have a chat with the Students' Union to potentially change names of clubs if you think that would help, but also have a discussion around how you can change the way that you run sports and to change the way that you market sports as well to make it more inclusive, as that's a really developing space as well. Anybody else got any points to add or moving on? Cool. So wanted to ask you as well to have a discussion again about what do you reckon that the university or the students' union can do to make their spaces more inclusive, to make their practices more inclusive, to make teaching more inclusive, or anything that you can think of? Just any ideas that we can take to the university or the students' union to make your experience better this year. I'll give you about 10-15 minutes to have a discussion. The brownies,
There are no brownies.
there are no brownies, but there's free coffee and tea in the Students' Union and refreshments there. I am very sorry. Who were you lied to by? Sam. I will. I'll prepare him. As the car park. I'm just kidding. Please don't beat up Sam.
About 10 minutes after I started, and they were like, I asked them, aren't you guys in the top now? And they were like, well, we were waiting for you to take this thing. You're in the top. And I was like, huh? So I looked at the sign bill, my name was out, and I was like, oh. So I ran over here and I'm like, hi.
Hey, just bringing everybody back then. Anybody got any ideas about how the university or students' union could improve inclusivity? Yes. Yes, that is a piece of policy that we passed last year. The university has now got an action plan on making sure that every building in the university has gender neutral toilets. So that's going to take a few years, but every single new building or new space that the university provides has to, by policy, now have gender neutral bathrooms. So that's a big win on policy last year, but one that they're trying to get across all of the major areas. We were talking about it with the LGBT SOC, and they said that the most important places at the minute were Brailsford in the central building, so that's where the university is starting on first, so ensuring that Pontio, Main Arts, Brailsford, the sports centres have gender inclusive toilets and changing rooms as well. So that's something that's going to get rolled out across the rest of the university, but if you want an input on it, we've got student seats on that committee directing the change, so please come to us and we can put you on that committee to discuss it as well with the university. But yeah, that's a super important one. Anybody else? Yes. Well, that's a super important one. With all of these, if you want to be involved in the implementation of this further than just raising it with myself, please send me an email and I'll get you in touch with the relevant people within the university so you can be a part of that conversation. But if you don't want to be a part of that conversation, raising it here as well is super important, so I can take that myself to the university. But if you want to be a continued part of this discussion, please let me know via email. Yes. That's a really important point. Please write a petition about this so we can say to the university, this isn't just coming from the Students' Union, it's coming from students directly themselves. Quote these in the petitions, quote all the legislation you possibly can do, because then the university has to act on it, has to listen on it. So please do that. But good point as well. Yeah. Yeah. Lifts and chairlifts. Yeah. Yeah, I definitely think that Bangor's really inaccessible located place, isn't it? We've got loads of hills, and it causes a real problem for some students. Stuff that we've already got in place is the disability services provide a bursary for students who need it to be able to pay for taxis and transport. But I do agree that it's not enough and we could be doing more. The council has agreed to look into doing a shuttle bus between St Mary's, Frith, inaccessible parts of campus, as well as going to the Marine Institute and that sort of ring. So hopefully in the next year or so we'll be able to get that up and running too, but it is a space that we can definitely do a lot more work on, as well as getting it out to students before they come to Bangor, what locations might be best for students with physical disabilities. For example, saying on the St Mary's website, please note that this is up a very steep hill, so if you want more accessible accommodation, please look here, here and here, that sort of thing. Anybody else got any points? Yes. Is it something that you've raised with your course rep before or the union before? No, yeah, that's fine. If you want to raise it through your course reps, that would be really handy as well. But something we can definitely raise as a students' union too. The implementation of PLSPs is super important. Just for knowledge, does everybody in this room know what a PLSP is? Show of hands. Yeah, that's a fairly good number, actually. That's good. So that's personal learning support plan that you can get from the disability services. Just type it into the Bangor University website if you think you need it or a friend needs it. This can provide you with accommodations for exams, lecturers, support in lectures as well. But yes, the implementation of these is really, really sketchy, and we're also working with students who are neurodivergent to try and get those disabilities recognised within PLSPs as well. Because when you're delivering a presentation, particularly one like this, it's really, really difficult for students who are neurodivergent to make eye contact and to read from slides whilst presenting slides. So accommodations for not marking eye contact, not marking grammar in presentations as well as written work is super important and something we're lobbying for at the minute. But please do talk to us if you want to be a part of that work. We can get you in the spaces to talk to the uni as well if you want. Yes. Right, so with that one, the two options that I'd give you is to the best of my ability, I'll try and support you as much as I possibly can if you give it to me via email, but also just write it down on the petitions website, because we by policy and by law have to listen to those petitions, because if marked by 30 students, we have an obligation to make sure that that happens under our bylaws and policies. So writing it there is it gives you a legislative obligation for us to work on it, essentially. So please do give me an email about it, write it on the petitions. If you as a course rep, or any of you as course reps, feel like you're not getting listened to by the university or your school, you can always come to us and we'll try and help you as much as we possibly can. And to go above our heads, if you want to, you can always go to the Pro Vice Chancellor for Education, who you heard from this morning. Her office is in Main Arts, or you can email her directly. That's the highest person you can go to within the university. She's got an open door policy. You can always speak to her. Cool. It's something we can definitely look into with campus services, but there's also a evacuation point as well. So if any wheelchair users are in the hub, they can go to the evacuation point, and that's where the firefighters will go first to evacuate students through the windows from there as well. I can show you after the session where those are if you want as well. Cool. Yes, last point. So if anything hardware-wise doesn't work, it's not something we as the Students' Union can fix ourselves, but it's something that please report via the help desk. It does say IT help desk, but it is actually just the entire estates and digital services help desk. So if you've got any problems regarding accessibility and infrastructural errors, please report it there, and they'll get back to you with a response on the timeline of when they can fix it and how they can fix it. But yeah. Cool. So quickly moving on. So Cal had a really important point to make about including students who might be second language at Bangor, or that being Welsh students or international students as well. So I'll pass over to him to do a little bit of a talk about that.
Well, yeah, it's just kind of an obvious one, really. Like, if, as you may know, like many students in Bangor are international students, or even home students, Welsh language students like myself. English is a second language, and although English is the majority language of all the clubs and societies, it is very nice and inclusive to have someone be aware of someone struggling with their English. And, you know, when you're trying to get someone who is second language English involved in your society, be patient with them. And also like just take into consideration like whenever you're like talking to them or whenever you're trying to communicate anything, be it through message or through email or whatever way you communicate with them, do take into consideration that that person might take more time than the average person to process some messages you're trying to get across. Yeah, that's the point that came to my mind earlier. So
Additionally, with social media, there's quite a lot of students from abroad who might use different types of social media who might not be on Instagram and Facebook. And I know it's a really, really convenient way of getting out to students what you're doing and advertising to students. Please do use your emails as well and consider using other types of social media for those students who might not be using the ones that you originally use. Looking at students from China who might not have used Facebook or Instagram before, please communicate with them via email and make sure that all of the people signing up on your website that you're talking to them as well, as they might not contact your social medias. Yes. I've seen something work quite well within other language societies in terms of learning the language together. So having a group say this is what happens in our culture, teaching the other group and kind of collaborating through that side of things as well. But it's something that Sam's been really involved in as a student, was part of Langsoc and German society as well. So please talk to Sam about this. He'll definitely have some ideas for you to take forwards. Okay, so got to the end of the session. So I've popped up on the screen the opportunities at indebbanger.com email. You can always ask us for advice and support. Please email the indeb@indebbanger email if you have any comments about accessibility or you want us to action any information in that, and be a part of any of these campaigns. For example, the gender neutral bathrooms campaign, or the campaign to make rooms more accessible and the university more accessible. If you want to be in on those spaces, please let us know and we can get you in those spaces as well. If you don't want to be in those spaces but just want to raise the concern via email, we can take that forwards to the university. And again, please use the petitions page. It's super valuable, and again, part of policy that the university and the Students' Union has to action those coming forwards. So does anybody have any final questions? No, okay, I'll let you go. So you've got 10 minutes until the next session.